The moment I had been dreaming of since I was a little girl had finally arrived. The air buzzed with soft whispers and the faint scent of fresh roses as I stood at the altar, my hands trembling, not with nerves but with pure happiness. The church was bathed in golden light, the afternoon sun streaming through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the polished wooden floors. Rows of familiar faces filled the pews, family, friends, and loved ones, all gathered to witness the beginning of my new life with Jake. I stole a glance at him. His deep brown eyes locked onto mine, full of love and unspoken promises. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tailored navy blue suit, his fingers twitching slightly at his side as if he was restraining himself from reaching for me. Everything was perfect, until the doors slammed open. The sharp bang echoed through the church, cutting through the peaceful atmosphere like a blade. A collective gasp rippled through the guests, and heads swiveled toward the entrance. There, standing in the doorway, was Vanessa, my sister. The one person I hadn't wanted here. The one person who had sworn she wouldn't come. She stood there in a tight sequined red dress, completely inappropriate for a wedding. Her hair styled to perfection, her lips curled into a knowing smirk. She always had a flair for the dramatic, but even for her, this was extreme. Her heels clicked against the stone floor as she strutted forward, her pace slow, deliberate, as if she were making a grand entrance at a red carpet event instead of crashing my wedding. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. A murmur spread through the room, guests whispering, exchanging uneasy glances. Jake's parents stiffened in their seats. My bridesmaids shifted uncomfortably. My mother, sitting in the front row, pressed her fingers against her temple, her expression a mix of embarrassment and frustration. Vanessa lived for attention, and I had a sinking feeling she had just found the perfect way to make this day all about her. And then she opened her mouth. "Stop this wedding." Her voice rang out, bold and confident, as if she were a heroine in some over-the-top soap opera. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Jake's hand twitched at his side. His expression darkened, his brows knitting together in a mix of confusion and anger. The officiant hesitated, looking between Vanessa and me, clearly unsure of what to do. I could feel every pair of eyes in the church drilling into me, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to fall apart under Vanessa's ambush. But I wouldn't. Not today. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and finally spoke. "What the hell are you doing, Vanessa?" She let out a dramatic sigh, shaking her head as if she were some tragic figure carrying a terrible burden. I couldn't stay quiet, not when I know the truth. I narrowed my eyes. "What truth?" She turned toward the guests, her voice dropping into a sympathetic, almost pitying tone. "I know you all think this is a beautiful love story, that my sister and Jake are meant to be." She scoffed, shaking her head. "But what if I told you?" She paused for effect, scanning the crowd, milking every second of attention before finally continuing, "that this entire relationship is built on a lie." I felt my stomach twist, but I kept my expression blank. I knew exactly what she was doing. Vanessa had always been jealous of me. Ever since we were kids, she couldn't stand the idea of me being happy while she was stuck in her own self-destructive cycle. She had tried to one-up me in everything. School, friendships, relationships, but nothing ever seemed to be enough for her. And now she was here at my wedding, trying to ruin the most important day of my life. Jake finally stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Vanessa, whatever this is, now is not the time." She ignored him, her eyes locked onto mine like a predator sizing up its prey. "I tried to tell you before, but you wouldn't listen," she said, shaking her head in mock disappointment. "So I had no choice but to do this publicly." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "Do what exactly?" She smirked, then pulled out her phone. And that's when my stomach really dropped. "I have proof," she announced dramatically, waving the device in the air. "Jake isn't who you think he is." A collective hush fell over the room. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. Jake's parents exchanged uneasy glances. My father sat stiffly in his chair, his jaw tight, his hands balled into fists. My bridesmaids looked at me with a mix of concern and curiosity. And Vanessa, she was loving this. She tapped on her phone screen, her expression triumphant. I have screenshots, messages, recordings. She met my gaze, her eyes gleaming. Do you really want to marry someone who's been lying to you? My heart pounded, not because I believed her, but because I knew how easily lies could spread. How quickly doubt could take root, even among the people who loved you the most. Jake took a step forward, his voice low and dangerous. Vanessa, this is ridiculous. Whatever you think you have, it's fake. Oh, really? She tilted her head, arching an eyebrow. Then why don't we show everyone? She lifted her phone higher, her thumb hovering over the screen, ready to expose whatever twisted fabrication she had cooked up. I should have been shaking. I should have been panicking. But I wasn't. Because Vanessa had no idea what was coming. I exhaled slowly, forcing my voice to stay calm, steady. You really thought I wouldn't see this coming? Vanessa faltered for the first time. A flicker of confusion flashed across her face, just for a second, but I caught it. She had expected me to crumble, to beg, to be humiliated in front of everyone. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Because while she had been planning to ruin my wedding, I had been planning for her. And she was about to learn the hard way that she had just walked into her own downfall. The silence in the church was suffocating. My fingers curled into fists at my sides, my nails pressing into my palms so hard it almost hurt, but not as much as the betrayal Vanessa was trying to force on me. She stood there, her phone gripped tightly, her smirk unwavering. But I had seen the flicker of doubt in her eyes when I didn't react the way she expected. She wanted tears. She wanted chaos. She wanted me to break down in front of everyone. Not today. Jake's hand found mine, his fingers wrapping around mine, warm and steady. This is insane, he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear. She's lying. I knew that. I knew that. But Vanessa wasn't just any liar. She was a master at twisting the truth. She had done it when we were kids, convincing my mom that I was the one who had broken the antique vase, when it was her who had knocked it over in a tantrum. She had done it in high school when she spread a rumor that I had stolen her boyfriend, when in reality, he had dumped her because he couldn't handle her toxic games. And now she was doing it again. Only this time the stakes were higher. She turned her phone toward the crowd, her expression triumphant. You all deserve to see the truth about Jake. I forced myself to breathe evenly, my pulse hammering in my ears. They come. Don't give her the reaction she wants. Jake's jaw was tight, his shoulders squared. He was angry, but more than that, he was hurt. Not by her, but by the fact that she had stolen this moment from us. Go ahead, Vanessa, I said, my voice sharp. Show everyone what you have. The smirk faltered. She hadn't expected that. Vanessa liked being in control, liked making people squirm under the weight of her accusations. But the second you pushed back, she lost her grip. Her lips pressed together for a fraction of a second before she recovered. With an exaggerated sigh, she held up the phone and swiped through her messages. Here, she announced dramatically, zooming in on a conversation. This is between Jake and, well, let's just say it's not my sister. My stomach twisted. Not because I believed her, but because I knew how easily people could be manipulated. People in the crowd leaned forward, trying to get a better look at the screen. Someone in the back murmured, "Oh my God." Jake exhaled sharply, stepping forward. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice firm. "Whatever you have is fake." Vanessa scoffed. "Oh please. Are you really going to stand here and pretend this isn't real?" She turned the phone toward me. "Read it, sis. Loud. Let everyone hear the truth." I didn't take the phone. Instead, I studied her. She wanted me to react. She wanted me to doubt Jake, to hesitate, even for a second. Because hesitation. That was all she needed. I met Jake's gaze. "Did you ever send messages like this?" "No," he said without hesitation. His eyes held no fear, no guilt. Just frustration. I have no idea where she got those, but I promise you they're fake. Vanessa let out a loud, exaggerated laugh. Oh, how convenient. She turned the phone back toward the crowd. Look at this, she pointed at the screen. It says, I can't wait to see you tonight. I'll make up an excuse for my fiancé. She dragged her gaze back to me, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Wow, that must sting. I stared at the messages. The name on the screen read Jake, but something wasn't right. The messages were too perfect, too clean, too scripted. Something clicked. I tilted my head. Vanessa. My voice was softer now, controlled. Can I see the contact? She faltered for just a second before forcing another smirk. You don't need to. I already opened the messages for you. Jake took a step closer, his body tense beside me. No, show us the contact, he demanded. Let's see the number. Vanessa's fingers curled tighter around the phone. She hesitated, the first sign of real cracks in her performance. And that was all I needed. Smiled. You made these, didn't you? The murmur in the crowd grew louder. People were whispering, doubting. Vanessa's eyes darted toward our mother, who was now standing, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. You're seriously going to believe them over proof? My mother's voice was calm but icy. I'd like to see the contact information, Vanessa. Crap. Vanessa's fingers hovered over the screen before she let out an exasperated sigh and shoved the phone back into her purse. Fine. Believe what you want, she snapped. But don't say I didn't try to warn you. She spun on her heel, marching back down the aisle, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. No applause. No gasp. Just silence. Because everyone in that church had seen it. The way she dodged. The way she panicked when we asked to see something real. Vanessa had lost. I let out a slow breath, my entire body still thrumming with adrenaline. Jake turned to me, his voice soft. Are you okay? I swallowed. Was I? Vanessa had tried to destroy this moment for me. She had tried to plant doubt, to make me question the one person I loved most. But instead, she had only proven how far she was willing to go to see me unhappy. I lifted my chin, squaring my shoulders. She almost got me, I admitted. For a second, I really thought. Jake cupped my face gently, his thumb brushing my cheek. I would never, he said quietly. Not in a million years. And I believed him. Because Vanessa wasn't just lying about the messages. She had been lying to herself. Lying about the idea that she could still control me, that she could still break me. But this time, I wasn't the same girl who had let her win. This time I had fought back. And I had won. I stood at the altar, my pulse still thrumming from the confrontation that had just unraveled. The weight of Vanessa's lies lingered in the air, but it was different now, lighter. She had lost, and everyone knew it. But it wasn't enough. Because I knew Vanessa. This wasn't over for her. She wouldn't just slink away and lick her wounds. She would plot. She would scheme. She would find another way to insert herself into my life, to make sure I paid for humiliating her. I wasn't going to let that happen. As Jake and I exchanged vows, I felt an odd sense of clarity settle over me. Vanessa had spent years trying to control me, tearing down everything I had built just to remind me that she could. But now it was my turn. The moment the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I smiled. But not just because I was happy. Because I had already set my plan in motion. Vanessa had walked into my wedding thinking she was the one pulling the strings. She had no idea that by the time the night was over, she would be the one left in ruins. The reception was held at an elegant estate just outside the city. High ceilings, chandeliers dripping in crystals, a grand staircase that made every guest feel like royalty. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. Vanessa sat at a corner table, arms crossed, her expression set in a deep scowl. She wasn't even pretending to be happy for me. But I wasn't done with her yet. Jake wrapped an arm around my waist as we greeted guests, his warmth grounding me. Are you okay? He murmured. He nodded. Better than okay. Because while Vanessa thought the night was winding down, her real nightmare was just beginning. I made my way to the DJ booth and whispered something to the man behind the turntables. He gave me a slow nod, then signaled the waitstaff. Seconds later, champagne glasses were being passed around. I picked mine up, stepping into the center of the dance floor, my smile widening as all eyes turned toward me. "A toast," I called out. The room hushed. I could feel Vanessa watching me, waiting, probably hoping I would break down, that I would make some emotional speech about love and trust, about forgiveness. Instead, I turned to her. "Vanessa," I said smoothly, lifting my glass. "You have always been, how do I put this? Unforgettable." She stiffened. A few scattered chuckles rippled through the crowd. My mother pursed her lips, clearly bracing herself. "But tonight," I continued, tilting my head, "I think it's time everyone truly gets to know you." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" I pulled my phone from the pocket of my gown and tapped the screen. The projector behind me flickered to life. And then the first message appeared. Vanessa's text history, in full display for all to see. Gasps erupted across the room. My mother's face drained of color. What? Vanessa shot to her feet, eyes wide. "Oh, sit down, Vanessa," I said sweetly. "You've done enough talking for one night." The messages continued flashing. "Vanessa, don't worry, I'll handle her. She always falls for it." "Vanessa, I'll make sure she doubts him. This wedding is not happening." "Vanessa, I just need the fake texts to look real. If she hesitates for even a second, I win." It was all there. Proof that she had staged everything. That she had fabricated the messages to ruin my wedding. I turned to her, savoring the panic flashing across her face. "You really should be more careful about where you store your backups," I mused. "Turns out your little plans weren't so hard to find." Vanessa whipped around to the table behind her. Who gave her my phone?" A snicker came from the crowd. She turned back to me, her face now burning red. "You hacked me." I laughed. "Oh please. I didn't need to. You never change your passwords, Vanessa." Another wave of murmurs rippled through the room. Her hands clenched into fists. "You think this is funny?" she seethed. "No," I said, stepping closer, lowering my voice just enough so only she could hear. "I think it's justice." Vanessa's breathing turned ragged. "You think humiliating me will fix everything?" I leaned in, my smile never faltering. "No. But it sure as hell feels good." He screamed. A full, frustrated, furious scream. Then in a blur, she grabbed the nearest champagne flute and hurled it at me. Jake was faster. He yanked me back just in time. The glass shattered against the floor, missing me by inches. Gasps echoed around us. Silence followed. And then, "Security!" My mother's voice rang out, sharp and cold. "Escort her out." Vanessa's face contorted in disbelief. "Mom!" "No," my mother's tone left no room for argument. "You've done enough." Two men in suits approached. Vanessa's panic returned, full force. "You can't do this." But before she could get another word out, the guards flanked her on both sides, guiding her toward the exit. She fought it. Course she did. But she was outnumbered. Played. Defeated. And as the doors swung shut behind her, the weight I had been carrying for years lifted. She was finally gone. The silence stretched. Then, one by one, the guests applauded. I turned to Jake, and he grinned. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." I laughed, wrapping my arms around him. "Too late," I teased. "You married me." And for the first time in my life I knew. Vanessa would never be able to hurt me again. Because the queen had finally taken down the pretender. Checkmate. The echo of applause still hummed in my ears as the ballroom doors slammed shut behind Vanessa. She was gone. For the first time in years I felt like I could breathe. Jake's hand rested lightly on the small of my back, grounding me. "You okay?" he asked softly. His voice barely above the murmurs of guests still reeling from the scene. I met his gaze and let out a slow breath. Yeah. And I meant it. The years of manipulation, the whispers, the constant gaslighting. It was all over. Vanessa had spent her life trying to control me, to twist me into something fragile, breakable. But tonight she was the one who shattered. Still, something told me this wasn't the last I'd hear from her. People like Vanessa didn't go down quietly. And I was right. The fallout came fast. By morning, social media was on fire. The wedding guests, some too eager for gossip, some just shocked beyond belief, had taken to their platforms. The biggest wedding disaster of the year. Maid of honor sabotages bride and gets exposed live. Karma finally catches up to Vanessa Dawson. I scrolled through the posts, sipping my coffee, while Jake scrolled through his own phone beside me. He let out a low whistle. She's everywhere. She wanted attention, I said, setting my cup down. Now she has it. But Vanessa wasn't just trending. She was spiraling. It turned out her public humiliation had consequences. By noon, I got a call from my mother. She's been fired. I nearly dropped my phone. What? She called in sick this morning. Apparently, her boss wasn't amused after seeing the viral clips. Vanessa had built her entire identity around her career, her success, her ability to be untouchable. And now, in one single night, it had all been ripped away. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought she'd finally take the loss and disappear. I was wrong. Because Vanessa had nothing left to lose. And that made her dangerous. The first sign of trouble came 2 nights later. Jake and I had just returned from our honeymoon suite, still basking in the afterglow of everything. I was curled up in bed, scrolling through my emails, when a blocked number called. I hesitated but answered. Silence. You think you've won. Vanessa. I sat up so fast my heart nearly stopped. Are you serious? Her breathing was ragged, her voice sharp with barely contained rage. You ruined my life. No, Vanessa. You ruined your own life. You stole everything from me, she snapped. My job. My reputation. You did that to yourself. I cut in, my grip tightening on the phone. I didn't force you to lie, to manipulate people, to sabotage me. She let out a bitter laugh. Oh, you're enjoying this, aren't you? I'm enjoying the truth finally catching up to you. Silence. And then, her voice dropped to a chilling whisper. This isn't over. Blick. The line went dead. A shiver ran down my spine. Jake turned from the bathroom, towel draped over his shoulders. Who was that? I hesitated, then met his gaze. Vanessa. His face hardened. She's not going to let this go. I wanted to believe she was just lashing out, grasping for control. But deep down I knew. Vanessa was about to make her next move. And this time she had nothing left to lose. The next morning I woke to chaos. My phone was blowing up. Missed calls. Messages. And the first one I clicked made my stomach drop. Vanessa posted a tell-all video. Jake was already awake, frowning at his own screen. You've got to be kidding me. Open the link. There she was, Vanessa, tear-streaked and shaking, staring into the camera like a woman betrayed. I just need to tell my side of the story, she said, voice breaking. Because everything you've heard. It's not the full truth. I exhaled sharply. Unbelievable. The video played on. She twisted everything. Every single thing. I was the manipulator. I was the liar. I was the one who had set her up to take the fall. It was a masterclass in playing the victim. By the time the video ended, I was shaking with rage. Jake stood pacing. She's trying to flip the narrative. And worst of all, it was working. The comments were already filled with people taking her side. This is heartbreaking. She doesn't deserve this. The bride was so cruel to humiliate her. I wanted to scream. She's going to use this to rebuild her image, Jake muttered. Clenched my jaw. She thinks she's winning. I grabbed my phone, my mind racing. Whoa. Vanessa didn't get to rewrite history. She didn't get to turn the tables on me. I was done being her victim. It was time to remind her that she had already lost. called my lawyer. And within 24 hours, Vanessa's entire plan collapsed. Defamation. False accusations. The legal team made sure her video was flagged and removed. And as for Vanessa, she was banned from multiple platforms for violating content policies. Her last lifeline, her one chance at salvaging her image, was gone. And then came the final blow. I found out Vanessa had been blacklisted. Her old boss had spoken to colleagues. Other companies had seen the viral mess unfold. And just like that, no one wanted to hire her. The woman who had spent her entire life climbing to the top. Now she had nowhere left to go. Vanessa tried to reach out again. Another phone call. Another desperate attempt to make me feel sorry for her. But this time, I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because the tables had finally, permanently, turned. And Vanessa Dawson was nothing more than a footnote in my story. Checkmate again. The sun filtered through the sheer white curtains of our honeymoon suite, casting golden streaks across the room. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, letting the weight of the last few weeks settle. It was over. The war Vanessa started had ended in her total collapse. And now, there was nothing left to steal from me. Jake stirred beside me, his arm instinctively wrapping around my waist. "You're thinking too loud," he murmured against my shoulder. I smiled, turning to face him, just letting it all sink in. He propped himself up on one elbow, his dark eyes scanning mine. And I exhaled, the tension finally releasing from my body. I won. A slow grin spread across his face. "Yeah, you did." The victory wasn't just about Vanessa. It wasn't just about exposing her, watching her empire crumble, or knowing she'd finally face the consequences of her own making. It was about reclaiming everything she tried to take from me. My peace, my confidence, my ability to trust in my own happiness. And my wedding day had been mine. I rolled out of bed and stretched, feeling lighter than I had in years. "I want to go out today. No drama. No stress. Just us." Jake smirked. "You sure? You don't want to check if Vanessa posted another sob story?" I laughed, shaking my head. "She's irrelevant. Let her scream into the void. I have a life to live." And that was the truth. I was done watching over my shoulder. Vanessa had burned every bridge, and I had better things to do than waste another second on her downfall. We spent the morning walking along the shore, the ocean breeze cool against my skin. It felt surreal to just exist without the constant shadow of Vanessa looming over me. Jake held my hand, his thumb brushing against mine as we walked. "You know, I had this moment at the wedding. Right before you walked down the aisle." I glanced at him. "Oh." He nodded, his expression softening. "Everyone was buzzing about Vanessa's meltdown, but when I saw you step into the aisle, everything else just disappeared." My heart fluttered. "Jake." "I mean it," he said, squeezing my hand. "That moment, that was all that mattered. Not her. Not the drama. Just us." A lump formed in my throat. I had spent so much time fighting, proving myself, refusing to be a victim, that I had almost forgotten what all of this had been leading up to: my wedding, my love, my new beginning. Tears burned at the back of my eyes, but they weren't from sadness. "I love you, Jake." He stopped walking, pulling me against him. "I love you more." We stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other, the sound of waves crashing against the shore. And for the first time in a long time I felt whole. That evening we returned to our hotel, ordering room service and indulging in wedding cake leftovers. Jake sat across from me on the balcony, a glass of wine in hand, looking completely at peace. "So, what's next?" he asked, watching me over the rim of his glass. Thought about it. My entire focus had been reclaiming my life from Vanessa's grip. Now that I had... What did I want? "I want to stop surviving and start living," I said finally. His lips quirked. I like the sound of that. We clinked glasses, letting the silence settle between us. It was a comfortable one, the kind that came when two people had finally found exactly where they were meant to be. When we returned home a few days later, my phone was surprisingly quiet. No more blocked calls. No cryptic messages. Vanessa had finally faded into the background where she belonged. I didn't know where she was, and honestly, I didn't care. What mattered was that my life was mine again. My wedding hadn't been about revenge. It hadn't been about proving anything to Vanessa or the people who once believed her lies. It had been about taking back my happiness. And I did. Fully. Unapologetically. Completely. Vanessa may have tried to steal my spotlight. But at the end of it all, it was my wedding. My victory.